That's awesome.
When all else fails, try the other one. Yep.
And actually, you'll need to be backstage.
We are coming. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rowan Duran, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a voting member of the Diversity Alliance of Puget Sound, or DAPS for short. Thank you for joining us tonight in person or online via live stream. We are here to hold space for those we've lost this year to unimaginable violence, not only to mourn, but to celebrate those lives lost too soon. We uplift our friends, family, community members, and loved ones today and every day. I would now like to invite co-vice chair of Spectrum Resource Center, Jesse Guecha, who uses he/they pronouns, to guide us through our intention and grounding with the land acknowledgement. Jesse Guecha was born in Muisca territory in what dominating culture calls Colombia, South America. He has mixed Muisca and colonizer ancestry and grew up on Coast Salish territory in a small town 3 hours from Seattle. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Washington in 2002 and has continued to live in Duwamish territory, also known as the Greater Seattle area, since then.
Events with the Puyallup, I've always been, my gender and who I am has always been honored and celebrated. And I had gender euphoria at Puyallup's a canoe journey that they hosted in 2018.
Oh, okay.
And also, sometimes we'll talk about, oh, well, grandpa or, that older person, they're in their 70s or something like that. And they just can't, pronouns are too hard for them, or they just don't get being trans. Ramona Bennett, who is an amazing
I try to use your camera.
Puyallup elder and activist, who is in her 80s, I think she's 84 now, has always been extremely trans affirming to me and to everyone. So again, that's a colonizer mentality, and but this is just a blip in time. This is Puyallup land, the Puyallup people. I raise my hands to them. They are very trans affirming. They're wonderful peoples, and I encourage you to support the Puyallup however you can. They have amazing events throughout the year. Part of being a good steward to that, if you're not Native, is to check to see if those events are open to Native folks or not, because that's going to vary some. But that's a great way to support the Puyallup. They have an amazing Pride event. Pride, they're their third year of Puyallup Pride. Also, here in the colonizer world in general, I worry sometimes about our legal protections for the Puyallup. They have legalized same-sex marriage, and there's no no threats to that, which is great, and I'm very happy for them for that. They also have a language department, which is working on revitalizing their language. They speak the southern dialect of Lashutsi. So the Duwamish to the north speak Lashutsi as well, but it's the northern dialect. Here in Puyallup, it's the southern dialect. If you live in this area, they have great yard signs that say in their language that you're on Puyallup land. If you're not in Puyallup, they have some other amazing, signs as well with other great messages to help get out the word about their language. They have wellness programs, youth programs, amazing things that you can support. So I invite you to check out their website and explore that more as part of being on Puyallup land today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. It's been an honor. I should probably tell you who I am. It's been a long day. My name is Oliver Webb. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Executive Director of Diversity Alliance of the Puget Sound, or DAPS. It's been an honor to serve on the DAPS board alongside these amazing people and who have been helping tonight today. Wow, it is, I'm telling you, who have been helping today to get this ready, and several others who have gone on to serve in our community in different capacities. And it's been a privilege to serve as this organization's first executive director, which was recently announced. We want to thank our counterpart event in Seattle, which will happen tomorrow, and is led by board member Astro Pittman, who is here today, who has spent countless hours with me planning and replanning these events. Far too many sleepless nights, Zoom meetings, phone calls, and emails. This event is how we met. And I am so thankful it brought us together, without which you would not be on my board. Thank you for continuing to work year after year to keep the flame lit, no matter the obstacles that stand in the way. Thank you to our steadfast voting members of DAPS, who put so much time and effort into helping us make sure events like this happen. Without you, we couldn't do this. Thank you to our amazing community partners. We were so very lucky to have so many of you join us in various capacities this year. Alma Tacoma, who donated this beautiful space today. University Unitarian Church, who donated tomorrow's space. The Human Rights Campaign, YWCA Pierce County.
PFLAG Tacoma, Gender Justice League, Spectrum Resource Center, Q Law Foundation, Beyond These Walls, Providence Swedish, Carolyn Downs Country Doctor Health Clinics, Lambert House, and Rainbow Center. That is a long list. Thank you to our amazing discussionists, who you will get to see a significant amount of them, who represent a ridiculous amount of amazingly talented trans and gender diverse and cis allies throughout our community who are working tirelessly to fight for our rights. Thank you to our live streamers, Renee Ricchetti and Greg Briggs here in Tacoma, and Nick Barnard in Seattle. Thank you to our security teams, Soup and to keep our community safe here and throughout Seattle and beyond. And a special thank you to Gender Justice League and YWCA Pierce County for all of your help with design and printing our graphics this year. We are so thankful for each and every one of you. All right, now to why we are here. This year, we've decided to move away from the trauma bonding model and instead have invited community members to have discussions surrounding the systematic failures and harms that led to anti-trans violence, the majority of which target Black trans femmes. We want to acknowledge the labor and energy that goes into events and anniversaries like this, and we want to take this time to honor and lift up those in our community who are most impacted by anti-trans violence, our Black, trans, and gender diverse siblings, as they choose to grieve and decompress in whatever way they need. Trans Day of Remembrance was first observed in 1999, organized by Gwendolyn Ann Smith to memorialize the murder of Rita Hester. This event has evolved from a web-based project to an international day of action. The yearly event, which celebrates the lives of trans and gender diverse individuals, falls on November 20th each year and seeks to combat trans violence, stigma, and erasure. The most important function of Trans Day of Remembrance is to restore dignity, to change the narrative that's been written about our loved ones after a hate crime has occurred. 2022 has already seen 44 transgender and gender diverse individuals fatally shot or killed by other violent means in the United States, the majority of whom were Black and Latinx. Sadly, these numbers are likely incorrect, as many of these victims were misgendered by local police statements and media reports or by their own families, which delayed the awareness of these deadly incidents. Each year, Black and migrant trans women of color are disproportionately murdered and targeted by anti-trans violence. Social stigma and criminalization of sex work expose trans sex workers to abuse, exploitation, and violence. At the same time, those groups are repeatedly silenced and underrepresented within our communities and societies. These victims, like all of us, are loving parents, partners, family members, friends, and community members. They worked, went to school, and attended houses of worship. They were real people, people who did not deserve to have their lives taken away from them. These individuals were more than names on a list or political pawns. Today and every day, we honor them. These victims were killed by acquaintances, partners, or strangers, some of whom have been arrested and charged, while others have yet to be identified. Some of these cases involve clear anti-transgender bias. In others, the victim's transgender status may have put them at risk in other ways, such as forcing them into unemployment, poverty, houselessness, and/or survival sex work. While the details of these cases differ, it's clear that fatal violence disproportionately affects transgender women of color, particularly Black transgender women, and that the intersections of racism, sexism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and unchecked access to guns conspire to deprive them of employment, housing, healthcare, and other necessities. Even in the face of this physical danger, hatred, and discrimination, transgender Americans live courageously and overcome unjust barriers in all corners of our country. But until we as a country and society address and dismantle these barriers, transgender and gender diverse people will continue to face higher rates of discrimination, poverty, houselessness, and violence. While it's tempting and common to pursue largely reactive and temporary solutions, we must address the root causes of this violence to make our communities safe for everyone. It is unacceptable that transgender and gender diverse people are killed simply for existing. It's not enough to grieve the loss of victims of anti-transgender violence. We must honor their memories with action. A society of microaggressions and systematic barriers allows hatred to fester and ends in lives lost. That hostility towards trans and gender diverse individuals is also connected to disproportionately high rates of suicide, houselessness, housing, food, and unemployment instability, medical and employment discrimination, poverty, mental health issues, and substance use disorders. I wish this was enough to just be here, loving and supporting our trans and gender diverse siblings, but it's not. Love is nothing without actions. We, all of us, trans or not, must all remember that we're still here because we as queer and allied community stand up and fought for our rights. And we did it by being united. Even though we're here tonight to honor and remember those we lost, we're also here to honor and remember our resilience as a community, to look forward together with hope and pride, and to unite as one in the healing of our collective wounds. Our community is unbreakable because we stand together and stay true to who we are, no matter what. We must keep going. For all the other days of the year, I encourage you to evaluate the ways in which you can elevate, support, and empower our trans community members to live out loud. To each and every one of my trans and gender diverse siblings here tonight, thank you for being beautifully brave and resilient. You are valid and you are loved. To my fellow trans allies, outspoken, visible trans allies are more important now than ever. If you see or hear something anti-trans, speak up and speak out. Violence is a product of fear, and fear is a product of ignorance. We allies have an obligation to educate and lead by example to erase the ignorance one person at a time, because silence equals death. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for holding space with us, because tonight is about community. We hold this space for you, for everyone who is here, for everyone who cannot be here for whatever reason. Let's take a breath. All right. So, like I said, we're not going to talk.
We do have to talk about the numbers. We do have to talk about why we're here tonight. But we are also going to talk about the systematic harms. We're going to have discussions. And with that, we're going to begin with an amazing, amazing discussion about trans families, finding joy within these families. So I would love to introduce you to an amazing, amazing person who I love very much, my vice chair, MJ Cook, and our first discussion of panelists on family. So MJ and the family discussion, please join me on stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is MJ. I'm the board vice chair of the Diversity Alliance of Puget Sound. My pronouns are they, he, and I'm also a trans parent. My kids are sitting right over here. Thank you. And I'm so happy to be here tonight and introduce this wonderful panel that we have. So joining us, we have Jesse Goicha. Pronouns are he, him. And Jesse is the co-vice chair of Spectrum Resource Center. We have Dallas Martinez, pronouns they, he, the board chair of Spectrum Resource Center. We also have Emma Klein. Hello, Emma, she, her. Emma is a voting member of DAPS. And we have Keith. Hello, Keith, he, him. And Aurora Klein. Hello, Aurora. Hi, she, her. And then we have Gwen Serenity, she, her. Hi. So we are all here today to talk a little bit about what it means to be part of a family and be part of the trans and gender diverse community. It is definitely an experience that has brought me an amazing amount of joy, just being able to be here for my family and see how that they've reacted to my own transition. That in itself has been an amazing experience. My kids are very well versed in all things transitioning. They have taken to my transition easier than I had expected. And they have questions. It has opened up their little minds, and just hearing how they have embraced me over these last 2 years has really been something that has made me realize that, you know, this is okay, because they see what I'm going through and they have learned how to accept so many people from all different walks of life, and the things that I've been able to expose them to because of my own transition. I'm just so grateful for all of those experiences, and that I've been able to share this with them and bring them into my world. And this isn't something that I've had to do on my own, but that we do together. And I know that I have their support. So for me, that has been monumentally important. And I'd love to hear from some of our other panelists here and how their own experiences have brought them joy and closer in their own families. Jessie, would you like to share how this has affected you and your family?
Sure. This is okay. I've always been who I am, but I didn't like come out as visibly trans until my kids were school aged, and that was a few years ago. They are now 11 and 15, and just as a brief example, my younger kid was about 7 when I talked to them about that I was that I'd started T and testosterone and what that was going to be like, and that I was going to be having top surgery, that was going to be coming up, and it was hard for them. My older child at the time was like, yeah, whatever, you do you. Yeah. Also turned out to be my trans child. So far, one and counting. But my younger one was like, and I said, trying to be helpful, I'm like, you can still call me mom, you can call me dad, because neither of those words take words from like their other parent. But you can call me whatever you want. You two are the only ones in the world who can use whatever pronouns you want. But it turns out, and all kids are different. Definitely go with your kids. But for my youngest, that was really anxiety provoking. He tends to be a little anxious already, and there was one point, early on in my transition, where he was like, "Mom," or like, can't remember which order it went, but it was like, "Dad, Mom, ugh, I hate your gender," and like yelled, and then was like, "Is this mad?" That then like broke down into like tears of crying, and then like I sat with him, he calmed down, and then he's like, "I'm gonna have 2 dads. And that's going to be so weird." And I realized I have at the time, like a good, like a well-rounded queer group, queer folks in my life, but my kids less so, and especially not 2-dad families. That wasn't, still could use more 2-dad family friends, but
Taking applications.
yeah. But that's where he was at, and then got further in my transition. He saw that I didn't really change who I was at a core. I was still his parent. And then today I asked both of my kids, my 15-year-old is in the audience, and had the choice of being in this panel. This is their first Trans Day of Remembrance event. So I think they, for them, chose wisely of not being on stage this year, but we'll see about next year. And my 11-year-old stayed home, but I told both my kids I was going to be doing this, and I'm like, is there anything you want me to tell people? Also, is there anything you want me to like not say? Definitely with respect. Both of them said, I don't care. And I was like, it's so not a deal that you don't that you're trans.
Typical kid response. Whatever.
Like whatever.
Yeah.
So we've gone to like my youngest hating my gender, like a lot of tears, this and that. So like I truly don't care.
It's not a thing.
So that's how things have been going in some degree for us. But also my 15-year-old came out over a year and a half ago, as trans femme. So that's also been a journey. Being a trans dad with a teen trans daughter who's also BIPOC.
Yes.
Trans femme, BIPOC, like I am. And that's a whole set of other things.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah, which I'm super supportive, but it's a scary world.
It is a scary.
Some of the things that Oliver talked about.
Dallas, is there any, did someone else have something that they wanted to add into that one? Dallas, how would you like to relate to that and your experiences as being a trans parent?
I think going back to the topic of joy that you mentioned, is I just want to say that my family is the reason why I can experience joy, transitioning, going through this process. Without family, and that's chosen family as well, my work family, I have some work family as well. Without those connections and those support systems, I don't think that I would be able to experience my authentic self to the fullest effect. Part of that reason is because I'm visible with them. I have visibility in their eyes. And so they bring me comfort, they bring me support. I have 2 kids, one is 10, one is about to be 6 months. And my 10-year-old has really been the biggest driver for me to be who I need to be in this moment. And I think that's a reflection of what we also teach him in turn. And so he does have a healthy amount of concern, the way that I walk in this world. It's not because of me, it's because of other people. He knows that he's seen it for himself. There's been times where people have, called me out of the restroom or felt the need to say something to me. And so he sees that, and he knows that things can get really bad really fast. But he's also seen the amount of energy and effort that we've taken as a family, that we've taken as communities to make things safer for us. He's seen our family, be transplants from Dallas, Texas to Phoenix, Arizona, after the Trump administration moving from Phoenix, Arizona to the Northwest. So he sees this progression and how we are trying to put as many layers of safety, awareness, education as we can around us to lower the odds. But we all have a good, healthy sense of reality. But I can say that they are a big source of my joy and the way that we celebrate. Our queer family is, we go to events like this together. We go to prides together. We break bread with other queer families. Representation, exposure is super important. And that's something that's really big for us. It's a big part of our life.
I completely relate to that. Mm-hmm. Emma, how has this experience been for you?
I think I'll let my husband, this is all his fault, so we're not.
Okay, so we're going in chronological order here. So
Okay.
we are all pandemic egg cracks, I think. And my eggshell was thin, perilously thin, for many, many years before that. But really before the pandemic, I realized, I'm not really comfortable with my sense of femininity, and that progressed over the pandemic, and the pandemic gave space and time away from society to think through things that normally, you might not think those thoughts because you're just going to have to go back out on the bus in the world everywhere. But anyway, so over time I realized, I see, this is what's going on, I'm trans. And so then I came out to Emma, and as we started talking about gender dysphoria and the experience of being trans, she said, well, wait, doesn't everyone feel like that? I said, no, as a matter of fact, everyone does not feel like that. And he said, uh-oh. And so, yeah, but then I guess I'll kick it over to Emma to take the next bit.
Yes, so at that point, we came out to Aurora, and in true preteen fashion, it was, that's cool, kind of wild, that's both of you, can I go play Minecraft now? And then she started asking questions, and more detailed questions, and eventually she hit the, wait, doesn't everyone feel that way? So as it turns out, in our family, yes. And then in building trans community, we we met Gwen. And somewhere along the line, I just became mom and she just became my daughter. And so we are literally legally adopting her. And so we now have 2 trans daughters. So our whole family, like, wait, you can have cis people in families? That's weird. I don't understand. How does that work? But I think for all of us, and I mean, I'll let my girls speak for themselves, but like, it's really nice having people who understand and just not having to explain little things. There's so much context that I don't have to give. It's like, oh, I'm feeling really dysphoric today. They get it. And they have their own experiences. Nailed. She is a teenager now, can you tell?
So one of the things that I was really scared about is like as I slowly started realizing more and more, then I just thought, shit, I'm gonna have to come out at school. And well, my parents had already kind of laid out the coming out to them. Like they were just like, so you aren't doing this because of us? Like they asked that a few times because that is a pretty large coincidence, I will admit. Or maybe one could call it genetics, not coincidence. But I was really stressed out about coming out at school. So I talked to my parents about how I was going to do that. And then I realized, crap, I really can't do this. I had to take a mental health day. When I realized that I was like, once I knew, okay, I am a trans girl, I had, was it 1 week, 2 weeks, something like that?
The timeline moved pretty fast once she fully accepted herself.
We thought that it was just like, oh yeah, sure I can last till winter break. Not a goddamn chance. I didn't even last 2 weeks.
All right, why don't we let Gwen jump in?
So I'm actually from Missouri. I've been up in Washington about a little over a year now. I kind of been questioning my gender for a while. I was pretty open with my biological family. A lot of them, a lot of my siblings are also somewhere on the trans spectrum, so it's kind of probably runs in like my genetics too. But yeah, through community building, I met and then sorry, I don't have a lot to say here.
Very nice. Oh, Evan, did you have something else?
For us, one of the things that we've really been focused on is like, I've been volunteering at Aurora schools. I've been a stay-at-home since she was 7 or 8 months old. And so I'm now more active within the school district. But there's so much for like trans families, if you have parents, or especially if you have trans kids, of hey, how does your kid maneuver through schools? Where are the roadblocks that the school doesn't even see? For instance, she was getting tardies for showing up late to science class because there wasn't any place she could change after gym class.
I had to change in the office gender neutral restroom because of the fact that I was so scared, because there might just be that one conservative person who raised a fuss, and then suddenly, like, law enforcement is just like, trying to get me in trouble for something that I didn't even do. So I was just like, I don't need this.
Very nice. Were you able to get all that resolved? Has it become easier in school?
Yeah, we've worked with them, and fortunately, so we're in North Shore School District, and I'm now part of a committee that's looking at structural changes within schools, so
That's so important.
physical changes, behavioral changes, but we're looking at stuff like that, so now she can leave gym class a little early. It's okay if she shows up late, but there's a whole bunch of different stuff that school districts, because North Shore is, as districts around you go, pretty progressive, and they don't even know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is educate them, and then hopefully can branch out to other districts. And here's the stuff you're not seeing, and for instance, she's a white kid from a family with money, like tardies aren't going to impact her, but for BIPOC students, parties can cascade into other things. So there's always that consideration of, okay, we have these issues. How are they going to cascade for students who are being seen negatively in other ways? And what can we do to fix that?
And I'd say, and this is, somewhat comes off of the joy as well, being a trans dad of a BIPOC trans daughter, who's in high school, they've experienced things in the hallway of pronoun pins being ripped off their backpack while they're wearing their backpack, some other things. Dallas is a good family friend, family. So I'm very quick to be like, and I work in civil legal aid, so I'll be like, okay, do you want me to call the school? Maybe we should write a letter. We could should we go talk to Dallas about this? And so it's like sometimes it's like funny. They're like, oh, it's okay. It's like almost dad knows too much. And you just chilled it. But yeah, it's hard for the kids, I think, whose parents don't have that knowledge or haven't gained that. Because what I've been really proud of seeing now, they're on among many things my daughter's doing, is they're on probably going to say it wrong, but some sort of committee or student thing at school. But it was part of getting gender neutral bathrooms at their high school. And then now people defaced the gender neutral bathroom signs almost immediately. So now they are having to go through the school's being supportive, but getting those the process of getting those replaced. And then they're in Edmond. She's in Edmond School District, and there's been some conservative parents that have come to the school district with not even kids in school apparently, and have been saying not even parents, but
we just live around here.
Some people that live around there. So the committee was asked to come to the school board and talk. And again, I'm like, do you need any support around that? That's great. No, I got it. So it's been really great to, I think, just kind of living out loud as an example in a way. It wasn't really my intent, but just kind of showed them these they and she pronouns. It showed them some things. But yeah, it's my talk, trans dads have it even harder. Kids that
Of course.
don't have parents that are
yes, or parents that don't know.
That don't know. But yeah, it gets a little funny around their house sometimes. That's knowing so much. It's like, no, stop.
I can only imagine.
I don't start, I ask, but yeah, no. Keep sitting there.
Great. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add before we wrap up our family discussion panel? No? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate it, and thank you all very much. And we're going to pass this back to Oliver for the next discussion. Thank you.
thank you so much. That was an amazing discussion to kick us off. It is wonderful to see some amazing families. I happen to know all of those families, so I'm a little biased, but trans families and trans joy is wonderful to see and to be surrounded by love. So, speaking of love, we get to next meet Hope Schumacher, who is Ricky Adamoro's mother. We lost Ricky last year to anti-trans violence. So we're going to get an update on the trial that's been going on. So Hope and then Dallas Martinez will be joining us now. Also, we'll have our entire legal set as well come out.
Hi, my name is Hope Schumacher, and I am Ricky Adamoro's mother. I came here today because I don't ever miss a chance to honor her. Ricky was murdered by her longtime boyfriend, brutally, really, and that was last year, October 31st of 2021. Worst day of my life. He was arrested, and he's recently taken a plea to a lesser charge. And this is just an incredible loss to our family and our community. We're devastated, but I'm gonna live the rest of my life trying to honor her and represent her and just do what I can to be supportive. And we just need so much more protection for our loved ones and our families. Everywhere, everywhere.
Hope, can you tell us a little bit about Ricky's trans community?
Well, where do you want me to start? From the time she was born, because I can tell you some wonderful stories. She wore my high heels on her hands before she could even walk. She always loved the pretties. Sometimes you get in a little bit of trouble because she liked to rearrange and decorate, and she would do that at people's homes too. But one story that's kind of special to me is she has a beautiful heritage, and her grandmother, actually her great grandmother, Maria, from Madrid, Spain. She was a famous flamenco dancer, and so when Ricky was about 1.5 years, we stayed at her grandpa's house, and I had to have her lifted up in the stroller because she had that reflex thing going on. And up in the closet were these beautiful red ruby shoes, and they were Grandma Maria's. And she was about 1.5 years old, and I think she was about 5 when she said, "Where did those shoes go? Where are they? I need those. I need Grandma's shoes." And I said, "What shoes are you talking about?" She said, "The ones in the closet at Grandpa's house." And I said, "Ricky, you can't remember that. You are 1.5 years old." And she said, "Oh, I stayed up all night staring at them. I love those shoes." So I think she spent, I think she finally ended up getting them. But she was an amazing child. Ricky's spirit and soul was female from the day she was born. And our family, you know, my mother was a devout Christian, and she adored and loved Ricky with all her heart. And she told me when Ricky was about 3, you know, our Ricky is female. And I said, oh, I know. So, you know, she just always was Ricky. And Ricky grew up educating and teaching many people. I can tell you that my child taught me a lot about love, respect, and acceptance. And she's still teaching me today. And she spent a lot of time in her community. At an early age, she went to school in Centralia, Washington, a very small rural area. And you know, they didn't have like a Stonewall Youth or anywhere for anyone. And she was very adamant about getting that, facilitating that and making that happen at the Centralia College. She made sure that Pride got to walk in the 4th of July parade. You know, she was the very first Miss Gay Lewis County in 2008, and also Miss Olympia. And she just was a trailblazer. She put together a panel so she could go to our little Centralia Police Department and try to educate them about the Pride community. We had a lot of people moving in, and they weren't being treated that greatly. And I think she felt like that was something she needed to do. She often stuck her neck out. There were many times I was terrified. The 4th of July parade was one, but she said, I'm a little worried too, Mom, but I'm going to do it because it's my life and it's what I need to do and it's my mission. And Ricky also performed in 2021. It was the first gay pride in Centralia, which was a very big deal. And she performed there. It was about 90-degree weather. She was hot and sweaty, bless her heart. And she sang and danced beautifully. And then she said, I'm off to Olympia. So she went to Olympia's Pride and sang. She's on YouTube if you'd ever like to look her up. And she performs under True Starlet. So, yeah, if you punch that in, you can see that. But yeah, she did that whole day, and it was her last Pride. And then last year, or just this last year, 2022, they dedicated Pride in her name by a ribbon ceremony, cutting ribbon ceremony. And that was really special. I just, yeah, so that's a few things about her. There's much, much more, but she was just a real trailblazer and very, very loved and supported by her family. So we are very, we're lost without her, but we'll go on and do what we can to remember her and honor her for the rest of our lives till my last breath. Thank you.
Before we move on any further from this topic, I just want to be clear that the person who took Ricky's life is currently going through the criminal justice process right now, has recently entered a change of plea, and sentencing is scheduled for December 7th in Lewis County. That's going to be at 10 o'clock. And one of Hope's missions is to gather as much support and advocacy on that day to really try to make an impact and emphasize the importance of Ricky's life and how this has affected Ricky's family, community. So we invite everyone to come out December 7th to Lewis County. Again, it's 10 o'clock. Also, please share it with your networks, with your orgs, and that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Haley Ockengay. I'm the Executive Director of Beyond These Walls. Thank you for sharing that with me, Ricky.
I just want to say thank you for being so vulnerable today. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. On that note, I love you. I have a lot of love for you. My name is Ollie. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a legal advocate in Kitsap County for a nonprofit. I am also part of the legal staff at Diversity Alliance of the Puget Sound.
I'm Denise Diskin. I'm the Executive Director at QLA Foundation, where I am part of Work Family with Dallas Martinez down at the end of the row. And I've had the privilege of knowing Hope since I think last fall when we first started the court process. And one thing that segue into our channel with is just my observation that having seen Hope walk through this process, carrying Ricky's memory and legacy, is that one of the things that the court system can really do is, particularly for our trans siblings, is the court system tries to make us disappear and make our transness, our diversity, our complexities disappear. And one of the things that shows the court system that we haven't disappeared, that we are still here, and that our legacies are here and our legacies are rich, is to see support, right? You know, the legal system, you know, sort of strips away some of the complexity of who we are, and particularly when it comes to people who, you know, who don't survive their encounter with violence, and particularly when that person is part of a marginalized community, is there's this urge to sort of treat them as an individual. The legal system does this in a lot of ways, we'll talk about that, but there's this urge to treat that person as an individual, and you know, surely this marginalized person wasn't cared about, right? Surely they were sort of alone in their difference. And so that's one of the reasons that having a presence in that court space on December 7th is so crucial, is because, you know, there are statements, there is paperwork, right, that the court will be considering, but as the court considers that paperwork, you know, courts are made up of human beings, and those human beings sometimes need to see with their own selves that a person was loved and that a person was cared about by a community, and that that person was loved because of exactly who they were, and because of that brilliance that they gave all of us by wrapping their arms fully around who they were. And so I hope you will join us on December 7th. It will be an honor to be there with Hope. And I welcome all of you to join us.
Well, I also want to thank you, Hope, for being so brave, not only tonight, but for over the last year. It has been an honor to have gotten to work with you as well. I have been able to meet you a few times as well. We also have been part of the advocacy team as DAPS, and we will be there also on December 7th. We will be wiping our groups, and we'll be canceling our first groups in the last 2.5 years. We've never done it, but this is important, so we encourage absolutely everyone, like Dallas said, to share this on your socials and encourage people to come, because like Denise said, we need to put a face to this community, and it's important. We need to show up, because it doesn't always happen in the state, and last year it happened twice, and this year it has also happened repeatedly. So we are not untouchable, and this has happened in our family, and it's continuing to happen. So thank you for being brave.
Can I say just one other thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to say how much I appreciate you all, and I appreciate you asking me to come here today and speak about my beautiful, beautiful child. I also want to thank Dallas and Q-Law because when I didn't know which way to turn, they were there and helped me, and I'm very appreciative. So, thank you.
Well, we are going to begin our legal discussion. You have already met everybody, so, and you know who I am. I also am an accessibility advocate in court for people. I have been an accessibility advocate for several years now, and I work with everyone on this panel for many different, put on the hat for many different reasons. We're on several coalitions. So let's get started. We do have some questions, but I think that we'll probably not really need to go into them necessarily. I feel like we can all hold our own. Anyone want to start it off necessarily? Do we have anything specifically we want to go into? I think that we want to go prison complex to begin.
Let's just get the big one out of the way.
I was gonna say keep it light.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty light, right?
Like it's legal, so why not prison
Yeah.
complex? Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Ollie, you want to start us off?
I mean, yeah. So in my years of doing legal advocacy work, I find that prison complex is something that just is designed to really oppress and marginalize the BIPOC community even more. It's modern day slave labor, if you will. And there is nothing inherently ingrained in our prison complex system other than privatization that models rehabilitation for those in need. So there also is nothing transformative about their medical care. Really, we're seeing tons of people being put into the wrong facilities, and we're seeing people not get the care that they need, not get the hormones that they need, because the prison systems are just privatized. So a lot of the funding for these places come from rich, older, white men who don't want to see that where their money goes. So unfortunately, the downside to that is a lot of people's lives are being taken within the prison complex system as well, but also just because of the lack of the medical care that there is for them.
You're absolutely right. Washington State has the third highest suicide rate within the prison and jail system.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the worst. I came out and started transitioning with my incarceration in 2013. When I first came out, Washington DOC's policy was, we don't care.
Yeah.
There is no care for you whatsoever. And me and a handful of other trans women who were out had to advocate for mental health, and advocate for hormones. It was an uphill battle. Fortunately, there were some wins in like Oklahoma. I think some of the more conservative states had wins, and that's what got Washington on board. What we're seeing now, though, is Washington State is using COVID as an excuse to stop all treatments, put everything on the back burner, pretend it doesn't exist, and they're not transferring trans women into the women's prison. They're not transferring trans men into the men's prisons. They're using COVID as an excuse to stop all of that. But they're not stopping bringing people into prison.
No, and I have a personal experience with a prison complex outside of the state of Washington. I was arrested in Kenosha, Wisconsin during the riots of Jacob Blake. I was illegally detained by the FBI and put in an ICE detention center for 48 hours. And upon being detained, there was initially no question as to what my sex could possibly be. you know, so I was put into the female side, and everyone that was arrested in our group was also put into private cells. Everyone was separated, but upon having to get out of my street clothes into these awful blues, trust me, navy blue or orange is nobody's color. It really isn't. So I had to change in front of a prison guard, and being a non-binary person and having top surgery, there was a huge question upon getting naked in front of an officer, and it's the vulnerability level increases because when you have an armed officer watching you change and questioning your body, it really changes your perspective about the situation. You're not just getting put into general population because now everything's a question. So for me, it was personally, oh, are you trying to be a man? And I was like, what? So the question, it caught me off guard, but ultimately the response led me to being put into a hole. And so I was stuck there for another 24 hours. And those are the situations on a smaller scale. It could have been much, much more severe. It could have been much, much more violent. And I'm probably one of the luckier trans folks that have walked away from a situation like that. But that's just a small scale of what we're seeing in these prison complexes. And it's really not a system that sets anybody up for comfortability or rehabilitation within their own skin. Every day is a struggle and every day is a fight, and the trauma that surrounds them from it is just increasing every day. They're living in survival mode.
Absolutely, thank you. Denise and Dallas, do you have anything to add to that? Or I know that Denise, you've done a lot of work. We've worked specifically together on the Transit Prison Project, which partially was built off of my incarceration right after the protests, where I was, they used my dead name despite the fact that I had all of my proper identification. Would either of you like to add to that?
I would like to say that, thanks for bringing up the element that, that some of these arrests that we're talking about are coming out of protests, because a lot of times when people want to put a face on folks that are incarcerated, it's really easy to visualize these horrible criminals that have done all these super violent acts, right? And we have to realize that trauma is being experienced to the same level, whether you're entering because you're arrested after a protest or being arrested for something like murder. You're entering, it's the same entry point, right? And so the level of trauma that somebody experiences is going to be very similar regardless of what the crime is. And so I think that's actually one really important perspective to bring to the forefront for folks, regardless of what their take is on, criminalization, reform, whether there's such thing as restorative justice or not. It's important for us to keep that in mind when we're thinking about these processes.
Thank you, Dallas. I think I don't have too much to add. The only thing I'll say is that one thing that I think is part of that is the way that we even define what is a crime, right? Wage theft results in the loss of far more money value every year and is not criminalized, right? An employer who literally refuses to pay their employees for their labor is not committing a crime. There's a civil action, they could be forced to pay back, but it's not a crime. So we have people who are stealing millions of dollars a year and could never spend a day in jail for it, because that's not how our system is structured. So I think that that's one really important thing for us to think about. The only other thing I have to add is, because I will say my area of expertise is not the criminal legal system. prison work, but, so I learned very much from everyone on this panel every time we talk. The other thing I will say is that the way that our civil rights narrative is designed echoes the same kind of racism that exists in our culture, right? And so when you think about who are our sort of, banner civil rights plaintiffs, right? Who are the people who we look to as like, oh, these are the queer and trans people who have vindicated our civil rights in court, been plaintiffs in these big civil rights cases. There are people that we're not talking about. And in fact, one of the very first cases that alleged gender discrimination on the basis of a person identifying as trans was brought by a Black trans femme prisoner named Dee Farmer. Right? She's not a household name. She deserves to be, right? She deserves to be a household name along with, Edie Windsor or Gavin Grimm or Mr. Bostock, Gerald Bostock, right? All of these civil rights plaintiffs who are all lovely people, but Dee Farmer was one of the very first, and we don't talk about her in the same way, and the bravery that it took. And I think the case was the early 90s, but I'm real bad at case years, so don't quote me on that. But the bravery to be a Black trans femme advocating for the rights of incarcerated trans femmes in a federal court, like that is just something that's really astonishing to me. And I think it's important for us to think about as we question our civil rights narrative, right? Who are we talking about and who gets uplifted as plaintiffs, and those are decisions made by human beings like lawyers, right? Who are like, whose case am I gonna bring? And so, so I think that that's a really important part of our conversation around legal.
Absolutely, thank you. As we wrap up, I do have another question regarding that. So, Black trans femmes make up 90% of the victims on these lists. And again, we've talked about, we don't know these numbers. These numbers are very skewed. We're well aware of that. And so what are we seeing in ways of charges being filed? And obviously, we're not all here as like criminal defense or any of that, but I know that you are working with clients that are either on the other side, and I know that you are aware of sort of how these are going through the system. So what are we seeing in way of like, what's even being listed as hate crimes? What is going to these deaths of DAs? What is making it into the system at all? And specifically, what is like the disproportionality of what is making it? What are we seeing?
Well, that's like a really good question for a wrap up.
Yeah, I just went, if you could do this like real fast, that'd be
real
great.
fast, by the way.
Just like, I have like a minute, so no.
John's legal.
Chop chop, Ollie.
So a lot of my background being in legal advocacy is working with survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence, but also those just a part of sexual assault too. And so a lot of what I have seen so far with Black trans femmes is false representation charges. And so the false representation charges usually come from them having changed their name or having a street name, and a lot of times they'll divulge, hey, this is my street name, I go by this, but my actual name is this, I'm a trans woman. And immediately there's usually something, there's more violence that comes out of it, there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of uncomfortability, but a lot of times in police reports, you can tell the amount of uncomfortability with the officers in trying to relay the information to. And so really systemically, there's just no training around any officers or any police or law enforcement of any variety, really, that would prepare them to kind of consider a name change or consider that false representation wouldn't be a thing, especially in so many cases, so many Black trans femmes have said, you know, up front, this is my name or this is my dead name on my license, but this is what I go by. It's very similar to what you've experienced too, Oliver. And we see too a lot of up spikes in name change dockets, right? So King County just upped their charge this year for a name change. And why? They knew that they could profit off the system. They knew that they could profit off our community, and they saw the hit and took it. So that's just one thing that I've seen so far.
Dallas, it looked like you were ready to go.
Well, I chuckled at the question because I love to ask the audience, when's the last time you heard of a hate crime? When's the last time you read about hate crime?
Those don't happen. What are you
Right?
talking about?
So
Yeah.
I think that's the problem is that we have the laws in place. We have varying levels of anti-hate laws in place. You know, we've got city, we've got state, we've got federal protections, but unless we're utilizing those things and holding people accountable through and through, it's not going to matter because at the end of the day, that charge gets whittled down through negotiations, through lack of evidence, lack of witnesses. And so now we're seeing such a diluted charge that it's no longer being listed and quantified as data that we can collect. It's things that we can learn from. And so from the jump, we have to be very clear about what these charges are and be really thorough advocates all the way through. And so it's always recommended that if you know somebody, if you are a victim of, if somehow somebody in your circle has experienced this, you know, it's really important to use the language verbatim. It's really important to stay on top of that report. And as things get shuffled around from the report into the officer's hands to the prosecutors to the courtroom, it's important to emphasize that language and keep it the way that it is, so it's always on record. But I go back to the fact of, yeah, when is the last time that we saw something go down as a hate crime? When was that utilized? And it's not often enough.
Absolutely, thank you. And Haley, if you want to close us out.
Like even within the prison system and stuff, people who are incarcerated, we see that the BIPOC community is heavily targeted, they're more marginalized, and we see a higher number who are victims of prison rapes and sexual assaults and physical assaults. And all too often, whether it's an officer who attacks them or another inmate who attacks them, typically it's either swept under the rug or worst case scenario for the perpetrator, they'll get an infraction and they can't go to work for 2 weeks. It's very minimalized. The same assault, if it happened out on the streets to a cisgender individual, someone would be going to prison for it. So, you know, you take the most marginalized community, further marginalize them, and we see even more assaults and attacks on them.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, these are our great legal minds that are doing the work. So if you could join me in thanking them for being here today. Thank you all. All right, next we're going to bring out our domestic violence discussion.
This is we tried. I'm clear. I can't drive straight. I also can't sit.
Always forward, never straight.
Never straight.
Never straight.
All right, again, just like a nice softball type of topic, we're gonna move right into.
So happy.
Yeah, it's super nice. All
We're
right.
not supposed to be trauma bonding.
We're not trauma bonding, we're talking about the foundations and arms. It is, it's super good. It's okay, I cried significantly less than last year, so we're doing well. All right, so I also used to be a social worker and I worked in domestic violence, which is why I'm here, still. Okay, so we know Ollie, so I'd also like to introduce you to Jesse Bolin, who uses they, them pronouns and is the Fund Development Manager for the YWCA Pierce County. Okay. And then Caden Jackson, who uses they, them pronouns and is a community advocate and group facilitator for the YWCA Pierce County. All right, so you're talking about domestic violence and intimate partner violence that leads to anti-trans violence. And so to kick it off, have you seen any changes in the program specifically at YWCA that changes your needs despite like past years after the rise of attacks recently? So we've had a lot of attacks after the Trump administration and the changeover in the administration. So I'm wondering what changes in your program, because you have a specific program. That's why you're here tonight. We did have a third. That's why I've asked Ollie to step up so that we have a little more of a balanced group tonight. So let's start with the YWCA. What changes have you seen to your program, if any?
Yeah, so I've only been with Y since mid-March of this year. But it's been really eye-opening for me as a trans person to come into a group of people that isn't at large, directly people I'm working that are trans, and not the lack of support, but the lack of education around what trans folks needs and the outreach that happens. Many organizations in our state, specifically domestic violence oriented, do not cater or even offer service to people who are not women, and specifically cis women and or medically transitioned trans women. And so there's a lot of lack of resources and lack of care. And even just little things for me, like I help run our support groups for people who've experienced domestic violence, specifically intimate partner violence, IPV, and just changing language, because our doors are open to all individuals of all genders, identities, and representations. But most people don't know that because there just isn't a lot of education around that. And part of that for me has been trying to do outreach of like, we do have that availability. Like you can come in here regardless of your, assigned sex at birth, your gender presentation as of right now, any of that kind of stuff, and changing word language, because so much of it is, battered women or female survivors, or reaching out to women, oh hey you gals, like, and that's not to say that in the past there's a lot of, like, we call it gender-based violence a lot of the time, and a lot of this comes from a patriarchal standpoint and how this violence occurs, but it does affect everyone, and there's just not enough outreach. And so part of that for me has been like, when I talk to people, I make it very clear that I'm a trans person, of the other identities I hold, of when we go into group, like not using gendered language, because we do have trans people in some of our groups at this time. And I can see the palpable difference, not only in their expression, but how they show up in our group when I do use gender inclusive language, when I do use transformed language, and it just makes such a huge difference. But I do have people who call in, because part of my job as a community advocate is that I directly work with the community at large. So if someone calls into us, they're calling into me and one of my other coworkers to ask for resources, for emotional support, to get into our support groups or other programs inside the Y. And so many people, I've had numerous people call and go, well, do you accept non-women? And I have to be like, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's great. And so many people are like shocked or relieved just to hear that. Because I've had people who come to me and say, I've contacted 6 different agencies and all of them have denied me because of my gender identity. And it's heartbreaking to see that and know that people have not been getting the care or the resources because, domestic violence is one of our leading cases of murder and death and suffering in our world, in our state and country, at least as a whole. And to know that like people don't know about those resources is really hard. And so a lot of this for me is wanting to be like, let's do more outreach. Let's, tell people that this resource exists and not necessarily we're changing all of what we have, but that it's just available. And so that's been a huge aspect of this because domestic violence has raised significantly during the pandemic. People are alone at home with their partners, particularly partners who use abusive behavior, and a lot of trans folks have been experienced vastly increased domestic violence, and they have resources. So that's been the biggest thing for me working in my position.
Yeah, I would add that from a policy standpoint at the YWCA, there's a couple of things that we do to be an inclusive organization. One of the things we know is that HUD, or Housing and Urban Development, has policy, specifically federal policy, that requires domestic violence shelters to accept people based on their gender identity. However, we also know that 30% of trans survivors who go to shelters, like DV shelters that are gendered oftentimes, have negative experiences, either experiencing discrimination by staff that work there or by other clients. And a lot of those shelters have a process where clients can kind of like report each other, say, oh, this person makes me uncomfortable. And a lot of those cases, trans people are the ones that are removed from the shelters. So our shelter, in a way to both address a trauma-informed approach, but also to help people feel safe and have a space to be their authentic selves, instead of putting people in a communal space, it's apartment style. So everybody has a door that locks at the end of the night. They have their own space. They have a kitchen. They have their own bathroom. We provide sharps containers as well. So for folks who are using injectable medication for whatever reason, are able to safely dispose of their sharps. So we do that piece, really making sure that our programming and our services are inclusive to folks with any gender, presentation, or identity. But then another piece is training. I have worked with a lot of different domestic violence and sexual assault agencies here in Tacoma. And a lot of the times the advocates, the reality is they don't know what they don't know. And the reality is as well is that anti-trans domestic partner violence looks different than cisgender intimate partner violence. The signs are different. The way in which a partner exerts control, oftentimes around gender identity and presentation, are things that advocates in a lot of domestic violence programs do not screen for. They don't ask questions around, is your partner making it so you can't medically transition? Are they hiding gender affirming clothing and items from you? Are they destroying those items? Those types of assessment questions aren't built into a lot of domestic violence programs because of the underlying assumption that the partner is a cisgender female, and therefore wouldn't need those items per se.
Yeah, I think a lot of the forms that those, risk assessment or danger assessment questions are based off of are from 2004, and they still use she or he primarily. And it's interesting because in my work position, I work very similar to yours, and that we have a shelter, and it is gender affirming, but there are a number of complaints that come through every type of gender. And it's really disheartening because at the end of the day, all of these programs are trying to do their best to provide housing or any sort of care during a crisis, and are just met by little block after little block. And how do we, as well in this community, but also work in this community, how do we go forward? How do we tell others that, hey, it's okay, like, it's gonna be okay eventually, but you've got to help us help them too. It's part of our work together as a community.
That's actually a great question and sort of what was going through my head. So Ollie, who you are in Kitsap County.
Yeah.
And then you have Pierce County, so these are not, Pierce County is by no means a like rural county or a smaller county. But it's also not a space that people historically have felt safe. It is, in the past years have gotten significantly better. And Tacoma has gone leaps and bounds, and our mayor is amazing. I love shout out to Mayor Woodard. But it still isn't, you know, there's a lot of pain and harm that had been done in Pierce County, and Kitsap by no means is a space that necessarily people have felt safe from our community. And so I'm wondering what you're able to do. So like, while your programs are doing these things that are starting to support our community, how are you getting that word out? So maybe your spaces are safe for us, but how are they able to know this? Like, how do we know that we can go to these shelters? What are we doing to be able to tell the community, hey, this is a safe space? You can call us, you are able to do this, versus having them come to us, right? Like how calling the Y, that's great, but it's still the YWCA. People are not going to know. It is, you know, we know what YWCA stands for. It's just like calling the YMCA. We know what these stand for, so people are not going to assume that they can call it. So how are we changing that narrative overall? What is being done?
I think for a lot of organizations, like the YWCA or the YMCA, it's really speaking out and saying, in all of the kind of marketing tools, right? Hey, it's not just women, it's men too. And actually, surprisingly, I have quite a few men that walk into my office looking for legal help, more so than I would have ever imagined, especially within the last 2 or 3 years. But really, I think it's important to have representation of the trans community within these organizations, right? When you see a trans individual working with inside this organization, it's trust, it's safety, it's okay, there's stability here, right? And that's really the core of what we do. It's not safety planning, it's safer planning. I can't guarantee anything at the end of the day with your safety, but I can do my best to make sure you are safer than when you walk through these doors, right? And then the other side of it too is when they see that stability, when they see our faces, because it's not just a one-time thing, right? A lot of survivors have to come back over and over. So when they see the stability and they see the organization grow to have more of these trans affirming individuals in that safe space, I think it also creates a safer space and a safer kind of community word as well. But most organizations, I feel, are more moving towards a more trans positive approach and allowing more training within their staff, or just doing the hard work, right? But it all starts at the root, right? So until we grab that root and create a radical shift, it's a slow change, it's a slow process, but I think we all try our best and actively work towards making it a safer space for trans folks.
Absolutely. Jesse or Kaden, do you want to answer that and finish us up?
I just want to build off what Ollie was saying, in the sense of having that presence of a trans individual in your agency or in your organization in itself is a calling card to having more of that safety, in the sense of when people approach us, they're like, oh, this is a safe space for me as a trans individual. Because I've had that direct experience with folks where they come in and maybe they probably assume, because I do a lot of phone calls, they assume that I am a cis woman, and then I mention, oh, I'm a non-binary person, or I use they them pronouns, and I can hear the change in their voice.
It's a relief. It's universal relief.
Exactly.
It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, and you can hear like that weight kind of fall out of their voice, or this relief settles in. And just, terminology we use, and I've had people directly say to me, I'm so glad that you told me that you were trans, because that's what allowed me to feel safe. Or I saw that you know, during group that you, because we always mention your pronouns at the beginning of group, that you said, oh, you use they, them pronouns. And to me, that automatically made this feel like it was a safer space for me. And then I wanted to continue coming, knowing that there was going to be someone here who understands me. And if there were microaggressions, that they were going to be called out. You know, in that sense of protection that comes in, you know, the pack, you know, of being with people who understand, who care. And then, you know, the other part of it of trying to create that, you know, welcoming sense of like, this is a trans safe space is language. And part of that for me has been, you know, making sure I'm really good about my language use, which, you know, takes time, even if you are a trans person, you know, readjusting when you've lived in a not a binary world, but also like educating my coworkers about terms that we can use that make it much more of a calling card that we are a safe space. So, you know, like I was teaching a couple of my coworkers about, you know, ASAB or AGAB or AFAB or AMAP, you know, and those terminologies, or, you know, being socialized female or being socialized male, rather than being like, this is your sex, this is your experience. And just things like that I've noticed like create that sense of positivity and that sense of welcomingness to other folks who in the past have, I mean, even if they aren't telling us outright they are trans, it kind of creates that sense of like, this is an accepting space overall. So a lot of the verbiage, a lot of that, you know, outreach, and then just saying like when people come in, not using gendered language. And that in itself has been like really helpful for folks who come in and they go, oh, you're not just assuming I'm a woman or a man or whatever, you know, or being like, when we ask people like, would you be comfortable giving us your abusive partner's name? What is their birthday? And like, even then they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a change in that reaction and that interaction that we have with them. So I very much like agree with what Ollie is saying. And like, that's been our experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to tie off, I think it's important that at the end of the day, know, much like Hope was saying about Ricky, that we don't feel safe when we leave the house, but we know it's our job, and we know we got to be there. And that's why all of us do this work. We know that we're not safe, but we know that we can't. Everywhere. But we know. I know, I almost did. But we know that we can't let the younger generations live and grow up the way we did. So we're systemically trying to make that change.
Yeah, I think a really important piece is, Kate and I were talking about this backstage. we can never not talk about it a little bit. But is that when we think about anti-trans violence, we oftentimes, like many types of violence, right, we imagine that it's like some unnamed perpetrator, but the reality is, especially for trans femmes, over 50% of trans homicides are by intimate partners. So we need to recognize that trans violence and intimate partner violence are inextricably, wow, I can't say that word today, are linked. I'm just gonna skip over that word, are linked, and we can't separate them. That they have to be addressed together, otherwise we're never gonna get to a place where we are safer in both the outside world, but also our homes and with our loved ones.
And sorry, I just want to, we keep going, we can lower stuff. Just like to add context that too, like statistic wise, you know, Jesse was mentioning, you know, the rate of homicide for trans individuals is from domestic violence. So like add even broader context that in 2020 in Washington State, there were 302 recorded homicides and 20% of them were domestic violence. It is a very pervasive issue. And if we see that within that trans people are the most likely to be killed by their domestic partner, like it just shows the scale of how vital this is and how little resources and outreach and, you know, I care that trans individuals are facing when it comes to domestic violence. How many things could have been prevented if folks knew that there was a safe space for them to talk about this experience, to talk about the fact that they're facing violence in their relationship. So I don't know, it's something that's really close to my heart. And so I like to mention those things just to, you know, display the gravity of the situation and how important it is to like spread the awareness, because just having one person to talk to about domestic violence in your life can, you know, be the factor between leaving this person and them murdering you for trying to leave versus leaving and going to a safe space where people are going to care for you and help protect you. So yeah.
absolutely. Thank you. And that is what we're doing today. So we're not trying to trauma bond. We're trying to talk about these things, and we're trying to bring light to it because it's important. It's important to talk about the root of these things. So thank you to our amazing gender diverse panel, which oddly the entire panel and the one that was missing was also gender diverse. So minus me. Sorry, I picked this up. I couldn't choose. I didn't choose. All right, so give them a hand. Thank you for our amazing panel. This next one's going to be a little messy because I'm not back there, and I don't know that they all are. So if I talk real
So we need Vinnie Fox and oh, they're all back there. Good job, MJ. We need our medical panel, and you don't have to look at me anymore. Right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fran Rourke. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns.
I am a retired nurse. I currently work as an EMT. And I think we're going to be talking about insurance coverage and denial and access and things like that. So would you two please introduce yourselves?
So hi, I'm Vinnie Fox. My pronouns are they, them. I am the program coordinator for LGBTQI plus education with the Swedish LGBTQI plus program.
My name is Helen White. My pronouns are they, them. I work as a gender health navigator at Carolyn Downs Country Doctor Clinic. We're a federally qualifying health center in the Seattle area.
Thank you. I think we're going to talk about insurance coverage and denial and access. So who'd like to tackle that first?
I think I work a little bit more with insurance than you do, Vinnie, but I, as a health navigator, I support folks who are planning for transition-related care, which is covered by Washington State Medicaid. I think I'm just going to go back a little bit of history. In 2015, the Coalition for Inclusive Healthcare in Washington State, which was a number of different organizations, Gender Justice League, Ingersoll Gender Center, and a number of other medical and legal professionals, addressed the Washington State Insurance Commissioner, Mike Kreidler, and said gender-affirming procedures should be covered by Washington State Medicaid. So that is on the books, but from the conversation that community members have with a primary care practitioner until they receive the care that is medically necessary and appropriate, a referral might get touched by 20 different
People within our organization and to the specialty care provider through the insurance company. So in that point, if the referral comes across somebody who's uninformed or misinformed or willfully misinformed, it doesn't go through. So my job is kind of like a quarterback to keep things moving on the process, or maybe more like a midwife. How you see these things. So there's a lot of things that can hold up people getting access to gender affirming care, even though legally it's on the books that we should have access to these procedures. Depending on the kind of insurance somebody has, depending on what the process is, it's different for each kind of insurance. But that whole, I find that when I have my initial conversation with people, there's a lot of apologizing, because basically what it boils down to is I don't have access to the care that I need as a trans or gender diverse person unless I have letters from people with degrees. I can't just know what I need for my body. Yeah, that can be that sense of having a barrier between what I need and what I can access creates, it does create a system of violence, and it creates a system of exclusion. And I'm thinking a lot about how that relates to colonial settler mentality in terms of creating those barriers to what's important for our health and safety. And sometimes it can just be the exhaustion of having to try for so long to access something
that I need that can lead to me feeling some kind of way, and just not wanting to engage with a system that has historically not been a great friend
to trans folks. Just say that.
Just to continue off of that, one of the biggest hurdles, and this involves insurance as well, is finding somebody who can do the care that you need, is willing to do it, and is covered by your insurance. Especially for people on Medicaid, it just becomes harder and harder, especially in this area. Facial surgeries are extremely hard to find somebody who will do them. Bottom surgery is almost non-existent. Finding somebody who can do that care and is covered by insurance. And just continuing off what Helen said, one of the biggest barriers once you find somebody is the requirements for surgery, gender affirming surgery, are 2 to 3 letters. One from your primary care physician, or whoever is prescribing HRT, if you're taking HRT, and 1 to 2 from a mental health professional saying that yes, this person is trans, yes, they have gender dysphoria, and yes, having surgery will make their life better. So it's that barrier of you have to prove that you're trans enough to get the care. Now, luckily, I say luckily, very small, luckily, WPATH came out with their new standards of care, and that's usually what insurance will base their recommendations off of. For top surgery, it was 1 letter. Previously, for bottom surgery, it was 2. WPATH's new standards of care says it should be 1 for both. That's still putting that barrier there of having to get that letter. And it's going to be a while before insurance catches up to that. I would assume at least 2 years, probably. The way insurance usually operates, updating things.
Not if we keep communicating with them.
Oh, no. We definitely try to make an effort of doing that. So insurance isn't just a barrier to care, just the same in reasons everybody else has. Insurance always wants to deny everything they can, but they keep putting more and more barriers in front of people getting that care. So it takes so much more effort to get to the point where you're just using the card to get that care.
I find myself when I'm going for medical care that the way I get treated is very variable. There are some people who treat me exactly the way I want to be treated, with my correct name and pronouns. But, I get tired of saying I'm not a sir, I'm not a mister. Would anybody like to talk more about that?
That is exactly what I do. So my job is literally to go into clinics, departments all over Swedish, and teach people about LGBTQI plus care and especially transgender care. And one of the things I always put into my introduction training, like it's my basic 101, is a whole big section on addressing people, especially about pronouns. Because it's so simple, but people make it so much more complicated than it has to be. I know at least with our program, we really emphasize getting rid of gendered language entirely. That's not just when you're talking to people, but also on any piece of paper that someone's going to touch, whether that be the chart notes, their after visit summary, or instructions on how to do things. So we are trying to get those more gendered language so we don't run into those problems. We've been trying to pass out more pronoun pens. I've made scripting for people of how to just ask someone, how do you like to be addressed? What are your pronouns? What do you go by? And re-emphasizing that if you're given a pronoun, that is what you are supposed to use. Not using someone's pronoun might get HR called because that is a violation. Could also be seen as outing someone, which is a HIPAA violation, which in healthcare, HIPAA violations are taken extremely seriously. So just emphasizing that, yeah, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, it's not that hard, but if you don't do it, it can cause so much more harm. Yeah. Now, and one thing I do like to really say a lot in my trainings, because you'll always get people who are like, oh, pronouns are political, and it's not something to be discussed in a professional environment. Pronouns only become political when people don't believe that transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse people don't deserve to exist. That usually from the classes as well. It really puts it in perspective for a lot of people.
Having gone to the doctor twice in the past week, I know what my next battle is going to be. And it's going to be to get that M off of my sticker. You know, I've got, I didn't legally change my name, so I use my birth name, but I actually go by my middle name, which is the Fran. But that M is on my sticker, and I don't want it there. And I get my care through UW Medicine, and they have a feature on their profile where I can specify that I'm genderqueer and my pronouns, and I've done that. But still on my sticker there's that M. So that is, I think, going to be my next battle, trying to get rid of that.
I know how to fix that. I can at least say from like what we do in Swedish, which I believe we use the same computer system, so it should be. So the process for changing, Epic. But the process for changing, are you talking about like the sex marker? Because they're different. We do have sex markers, and we also have gender identity. So you can put them both in. They don't always match. They're not always the same. Because they're two separate things entirely, which is another thing that I really like to emphasize when I'm teaching. But sorry, ADHD brain likes to go on tangents. So what our at least procedure is if your ID, whatever the marker is on your ID, that's what goes in the system. Washington State, if you want to update your ID to change that sex marker in there, it's a form. You just fill out a form.
Yeah, it's really easy. My driver's license has an X.
Then they should be able to put that in. There is no X currently in Epic, but there is, I think, other, which I mean is not great. But unfortunately with any kind of system, updates involve a lot of programming and convincing them first to do it, and then to get the programmers and software developers to do all the things. I actually get to sit in on Epic's brain trust meetings, so I get to hear all the updates that they're trying to do, give them feedback, and that's one of the things I've mentioned. But hopefully soon in the future that will be added.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Benny. I think Oliver gave me a 5 about 5 minutes ago, so we should probably be making final statements. Anybody want to wrap anything up?
Thanks, Benny. I really appreciate you going over that. I feel like we might have a different system of Epic, but I'm going to have to communicate with you about that on Monday. Yeah, I feel like all the laws around like who has access to surgery, how we get specified in Epic. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of costs there, but it's all part of this way that the trans body is, somehow needs to be controlled by the state. And yeah, every chance we have to push back on that and just bring our joy to the center is so important. There are different databases. There's like trans health resources that aggregators that have recommendations. If you're not feeling great about the person who's taking care of you for your medical care, like that person is your employee. I mean, you can give them a chance to change it, but if it's not working out, maybe it's time to try something else. Just putting that out there. And I mean, definitely going to the doctor can be a site of violence for a lot of us. It can take a lot of emotional reserve just to psych ourselves up to go to that, big institution. And if it's so important to take care of our bodies, and it's so important to have healthcare screening To make sure that we're getting, regularly checked for cancers, and just to have someone that we trust about our health, because our bodies are precious and we're going to live in them our whole lives. So just want to, wish you well on that journey.
So I guess just closing things. I just wanted to let people know, unless they are already aware that they're seeking care and they're having difficulties with it. Most insurances have nurse case managers who are there specifically to help you find care. If you are having issues, call your insurance, ask for a nurse case manager. Their entire job is to help you find care and navigate around insurance to make sure that you can get what you need. Call whoever your provider is, see if they have health navigation services. Swedish, we do have a transgender health navigator whose entire job is to help people find doctors, counselors, even just help with social things. There are resources out there. It does sometimes take a little bit of work, but just knowing where you can go for help makes a huge difference.
Oh, and can I add one more thing? Since we're here in Tacoma, I just want to call out Hilltop. They're doing some great care here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to say one final word on changing doctors. You do not have to confront the old doctor that you're getting rid of. You find the new one.
Start an appointment with the new one that you've gotten a recommendation for that you like, and have them get your records from the old one. You don't have to say anything to the old one at all. It's easier than you might think.
All right, we are coming to the end. So I'm gonna figure out these remotes real quick. Push some buttons. Let's see if we can do this. Oh, we figured it out. I don't know which ones. Oh, we all got them.
They are all lit.
Nick, we can lower the lights a little. I love when a plan comes together. All right, so thank you all for being here tonight. This list was created in conjunction with Morgan Wigmore, and is a combination of multiple lists, including the Human Rights Campaign, Trans Lives Matter, Trans Murder Watch, personal connections to families and friends of those lost, and many blogs and Twitter feeds that actively track trans violence and death. These numbers are likely not accurate due to underreporting, misinformation, misgendering in police reports, the media, and even their own families. This list does not include suicides. Suicides are consistently underreported, and therefore it is impossible to include every name. Additionally, suicide has complex causes. Trans and queer identified individuals face systematic barriers to mental health treatment alongside an increased risk of mental health challenges. This list does not include those who have died from COVID or medical malpractice. This issue is twofold. Transgender individuals often face barriers to healthcare and often turn to illegal and untested treatments. The pandemic has further complicated this issue. These barriers for transgender and gender diverse individuals in direct relation to COVID-19. However, these numbers are nearly impossible to pin down. As a result, deaths from medical complications have not been included. Tonight we will be reading the deaths in the US that we have been able to calculate so far. So this is my executive board. So these names are from November to November. So November 2021 to current. Danielle Johnson, age 35, November 7th, 2021, Memphis, Tennessee. Danielle,
was shot on Saturday, November 13th in Memphis, Tennessee. Danielle Johnson was found in a parking lot around 1 a.m. after the shooter left her and stole her car. While local law enforcement released several statements seeking the individual responsible, with all articles dead naming and misgendering her, there are no updates on if her killer was apprehended. Before I continue, I apologize. We will be discussing how each individual was lost. So if you would like to step out there, you can come in and out of that door at any time. Angel Nero, age 36, November 11th, 2021, Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Angel was found dead from gunshot injuries in her home after police responded to a 911 call seeking a welfare check for her following a suspected break-in. While her case remains open with few leads, her death did lead to a number of local news stories focusing on how her dead naming and misgendering impacted the local community. Nakia David, age 33, December 3rd, 2021, Oakland, California. Nakia was found with a gunshot wound at around 4 a.m. after police responded to reports of gunfire in the area. She died at the scene. Law enforcement has released statements that this was not a hate crime, but have not released any additional updates, including motives of persons of interest. Martina Caldera, age 38, December 6, 2021, Channelville, Texas. Martina was found dead near the I-10 overpass, although initially thought to have been the victim of a motor vehicle accident. Autopsy results showed she died of multiple bullet wounds. Her birth family was highly supportive of her identity, and combined with her chosen family, remember her as a joyful part of her community. Kiana Stone, age 32, December 28th, 2021, Indianapolis, Indiana. Kiana was shot in a nightclub parking lot in Indianapolis in the early hours of December 26 while attempting to break up a fight. She died 2 days later on December 28th after being taken off life support. Kiana was actively trying to create safe spaces for trans people, including providing safe housing in her own home and working with resource centers in Indianapolis. While police and media reports misgendered and dead-named her, she died while in the company of many of her own community members, who spoke extremely highly. Nikki Terrell, age 31, December 31st, 2021, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Nikki was found fatally shot in her home the last day of 2021, but her murder was not reported among the LGBTQ plus community until late January 2022 due to media deadening. Amari Lage, Mayara, age 21, January 1st, 2022, Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. Mayara was found dead from a fatal gunshot wound in the street at around 6 a.m. on New Year's Day. No suspects or motives have been named. Duval Princess, age 24, January 2nd, 2022, Jacksonville, Florida. Duval Princess was found unresponsive in the parking lot of an apartment block. She was pronounced dead in the hospital, where medical staff became aware that her injuries did not indicate a motor vehicle accident. Her death is now being investigated as a homicide. However, details from law enforcement have been extremely scarce. Duval had only recently started openly transitioning and is deeply missed by her loved ones. Matthew Angelo Spampanito, age 21, February 9th, 2022, Newcastle, Delaware. Matthew was killed during a hit-and-run accident while on his way to work. Police say Matthew was walking in the grass well away from traffic when he was hit. His coworkers, friends, and family remember him as a loving and caring spirit who is excited to be moving forward with this transition. No arrests have been made in the case. Naomi Skinner, age 25, February 12th, 2022, Highland Park, Michigan. Naomi was shot by her boyfriend, who has been charged with second-degree murder. Cypress Ramos, age 21, February 13th, 2022, Lubbock, Texas. Cypress Ramos was found dead in the storage unit in Lubbock, Texas. A suspect has been charged with murder. Cypress was a noted performer and trans advocate and is believed she was killed following a drag show. Paloma Vasquez, age 29, February 26, 2022, Houston, Texas. Paloma was found dead with a gunshot wound in her apartment. Due to dead naming and misgendering by law enforcement and the media, her community was not aware of her death for several months. She had immigrated to Texas from Latin America 6 months before her death. Brent Wood, age 31, March 3rd, 2022, Seattle, Washington. Brent's body was found near dumpsters behind a drugstore. They had died from multiple blunt force trauma to the head. Police report that Brent did not have a permanent address, but staff and clients of Compass Housing Alliance in Pioneer Square report that Brent had was an artistic and loving person who was deeply missed. Catherine Newhouse, age 19, March 9th, 2022, Canton, Georgia. Catherine was an Asian American autistic trans woman who grew up in Indiana before her family moved to Georgia earlier this year. She was shot by her father in their family home. Elise Mallory, age 31, March 17th, 2022, Evanston, Illinois. Elise's body was found washed up on the shore of Lake Michigan. She had been missing for over 2 weeks. Elise was a highly active member of her local community, and her case sparked widespread search efforts. Law enforcement are treating the death as suspicious, and an investigation remains open. Tatiana LaBelle, TT, age 33, March 19th, 2022, Chicago, Illinois. Tatiana's body was found in a garbage bin on Saturday the 19th of March. She had been missing for over 2 weeks. An autopsy ruled her death a homicide.
Kesha Webster, age 24, March 26, 22, Jackson, Mississippi. Kesha's death is under investigation with family telling the media it was a robbery homicide. Reports on this case have been sparse, made more difficult through inconsistent gendering and identity. Mia Love, age unknown, April 1st, 2022, Chester, Pennsylvania. Mia was shot while in her car, which was parked on the street in a residential area. A friend who was with her drove her to the hospital where she died. A suspect has been identified as being sought. Ariana Mitchell, age 17, April 2nd, 2022, Hampton, Virginia. Ariana was shot and killed after interviewing in a fight during a house call between a friend and a friend's boyfriend who was now in custody. Fern Feather, age 29, April 12th, 2022, Morristown, Vermont. Fern's body was found by the side of the road. An autopsy determined the cause of death was a stab wound. The suspect is identified. Ray Mustang, age 24, May 8th, 2022, Independence Township, Michigan. Ray was shot dead by his girlfriend, who was also trans. Ray's killer then shot her brother and took her own life. Ray is described as a loyal friend and employee with a contagious smile. Sasha Nation, age 45, May 13th, 2022, Zebulon, North Carolina. Sasha was shot during an armed robbery in her apartment. A suspect has been arrested. Nedra Sequence Morris, age 50, May 14th, 2022, Opelika, Florida. Sequence was shot and her body found by the street up to 48 hours later. A police investigation remains open. Maddie Hoffman, age 47, May 19th, 2022, Malvern, Pennsylvania. Maddie, a 47-year-old trans woman and a parent of 2 young children, was shot and killed by police during a wellness check at their home. No internal investigation has been opened despite the excessive violence on the part of the police. Dee Dee Hall, age 47, May 26, 2022, Dallas, Texas. Dee Dee died in police custody soon after police restrained her and put her in a spit hood during an altercation. She died in the ambulance en route to the hospital, despite paramedics' attempts to save her. An internal investigation has been opened, but few details have been made public. Chanalika Yella Dior Hemingway, Sid, age 30, May 31st, 2022, Albany, New York. Shanalika's body was found inside her apartment by police conducting a welfare check. Her death is being investigated as a homicide and a suspect has been apprehended. Paris Rich, age 25, June 13th, 2022, San Diego, California. Paris was found dead in a hotel room. Police are investigating her death as a homicide, but have not made any details of her autopsy public. Paris hoped to become a stylist and is remembered as motivated and protective of her friends and family. Brazil Johnson, age 28, June 15th, 2022, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Brazil was found dead in an apartment suffering from gunshot wounds. The circumstances leading up to the shooting are under investigation and cannot currently be verified. Charmaine McClain, age 27, June 21st, 2022, Gulfport, Mississippi. Charmaine and her sister were both shot inside their apartment. Her sister was hospitalized and in critical condition but survived. Law enforcement have apprehended the suspect. Charmaine was born and raised in Gulfport, where she was an outspoken activist for Black trans community. Kitty Monroe, age unknown, June 29th, 2022, in Memphis, Tennessee. Kitty was shot multiple times in her home after a domestic dispute. A suspect has been arrested. Cherry Bush, age 48, July 6, 2022, Los Angeles, California. Cherry was shot by her Sylmar suburb by a man after he made a disparaging comment about her perceived gender identity and sexual orientation. She died the next day in the hospital. The shooter has been arrested and was charged with a hate crime 2 weeks after the arrest. Despite reporting on the story as a hate crime, the media continued to misgender it. Jasper Aaron Lynch, age 26, July 7th, 2022, McLean, Virginia. Aaron was shot by police during a mental health crisis. On July 7th, police responded to a call made by a friend who was concerned about Aaron's well-being and went to his home to check on him. It was reported that police arrived with a trained mental health co-responder, but Aaron was not found on the property. Police then returned a second time with a co-responder. During this encounter, Aaron was shot 4 times. An internal investigation with no findings being published.
Martasia Richmond, age 30, July 11, 2022, Chicago, Illinois. Martasia was found with multiple stab wounds in residence by police after they responded to a call about domestic incidents in residence. Over a month after her murder, a former partner was charged with first-degree murder. Zoe Davis, age 34, July 16, 2022, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Zoe was found dead in a suspicious circumstance. Few details of the murder she died of, but it's clear she was well loved by a family and friends, with several fundraisers and officials following the death. Isha Chanel Peter, age 26, July 20th, 2022, Augusta, Georgia. Keisha was found in a hotel with a fatal gunshot wound. A former partner has been charged with the crime. Investigators say she was traveling with a friend and was found with at least one fatal gunshot wound and was pronounced dead by the coroner's office at 11 a.m. Camilla Marie Swan, D, age 29, July 25th, 2022, Kansas City, Missouri. Camilla was stabbed after an altercation in an apartment block. She died at the scene. Camilla was a notable sex work advocate and model whose community was shocked with that.
Hayden Eva Davis, age 28, July 25th, 2022, Detroit, Michigan. Hayden's body was found wrapped in a blanket on the pavement. She had been shot multiple times. Due to dead naming by law enforcement, she was not identified for several weeks. The investigation is ongoing. Maricela Castro, age 39, July 29th, 2022, Houston, Texas. Maricela was shot in the back after she got out of a car. Her killer then got into the car and drove away. She was pronounced dead at the scene. A.C.D. Morrison, age 30, August 21st, 2022, Rapid City, South Dakota. A.C., who identified as Two-Spirit, was killed under suspicious circumstances. A suspect has identified, but there have been no public updates from law enforcement. Dee Ricks, age 33, August 27th, 2022, Detroit, Michigan. Dee Ricks was found unresponsive with gunshot wounds. Police were called to the scene and medics pronounced Ricks dead at the scene. A suspect is in police custody. Regina Allen, Maya, age 35, August 29th, 2022, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Maya died from gunshot wounds. Before she died, she was able to identify her killer, who has since been charged with reckless homicide. Samaj Sincere Billingsley, age 33, September 21st, 2022, Jacksonville, Florida. Samaj was found in a hotel parking lot with multiple gunshot wounds. He was transported to a local hospital where he died. The investigation is still active. Tiffany Banks, age 25, October 1st, 2022, Miami, Florida. Tiffany was shot and killed on Sunday, the 1st of October. 4 days later, a man was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Very few details of the case have been made public at this time. She was buried under her dead name. So that was a lot. Let's take
So you may have noticed that we have pictures on all of our papers. All of these are found on the University of Puget Sound website, as well as the Seattle Trans Visibility website. We are not just going to send you home. Like we said, we don't want to just spew some information at you. There's a lot of trauma. So we are going to leave this space because we just put a lot of energy into this space. So we are actually going to get up and we are going to have our security team, just because they know where you're heading, not because there's a reason. They're going to take you over to the lounge and go through the cafe. Alma is amazing and made some really cool cocktails and stuff that proceeds are going to depths, and the lounge is open, so we're gonna head over there. We're gonna have some social time together, some decompress time together, and just be community together. And we're going to we're gonna spend some time together. If you would like, you also are free to go home if you would like. You don't have to follow security if you don't want to. But yeah, we thank you for being here and sharing this space with us. We thank you if you joined us on live stream. Also tomorrow we will be doing TUR Seattle. We are not doing this again. We are next year. We will be at TUR Seattle from 6 to 9 p.m. at University Presbyterian Church Seattle, with a whole other set of panelists. Some of these folks will be joining us again. Yes, so if you would like to head up to the back, they can show you the lounges. If you're heading home, please have to stay tonight. Those of us who are staying up in here will join in the lounge. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
We're all running.
Are you still streaming?
What's that?
Are you still streaming?
The stream is still running. The cameras are not featured. It's just
Okay, so we're not going to be.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Tomorrow's event is streamed?
Yeah.
Okay. In the same places? Are you streaming? Probably.
Oh, no.
The church is streaming. Okay.
Yeah. We have a crisis. My baby. And I only have one baby. I've been so good. I was like, okay. It's like, well, actually, I have it.
So good. MJ. MJ cook. On both sides.